And now to talk kind of more specifically about what it is to write for a career, since this is a creative writing class. In general, I only really know about publishing fiction, novels in particular, and so if you're looking to like put out poetry or nonfiction, I'm really clueless and I'm sorry. But if you are writing novels, there's kind of two main ways to get your novel out into the world. One is what's called the independent publishing route, or self-publishing, which is wherein you use a service like Amazon or Wattpad, or I think even some libraries now have like maker spaces where you can literally plug in a jump drive and print out a book. But you basically take 100% responsibility for that book. You're in charge of writing it, you're in charge of editing it, you're in charge of the marketing, the publicity, the editorial, the cover design, everything. And then you're your own salesperson. You know, whether that's contracting ads or word of mouth or whatever, it's all on you. And I think that's a really cool way to do it. You get a much higher return on like percentage of each book sold. But in general, except for like a few standout cases like The Martian or 50 Shades of Grey, it can be hard to like sell books in the kind of numbers that I wanted to sell. And so there's also traditional publishing, which is what I do, and that's wherein you basically sell your book to a publisher who then takes on the responsibility of editing and cover design and marketing and publicity, but they keep a lot higher percentage of each book sold. On the other hand, it's great for lazy people, and I'm very lazy. I don't know anything about marketing or publicity or cover design, and I really thrive working with an editor who can tell me when I'm not doing my best work and help me get there. But that being said, like it is a, much smaller percent. I think I get like less than 8% of the cover price of each paperback I sell of Darius the Great Is Not Okay. On the other hand, I've sold a lot more copies than I would have if I had tried to self-publish it. I generally avoid looking at numbers because it gives me anxiety and there's so little I can control. Basically, the only thing I have control over is the words on the page. But last I looked, I sold at least like 30,000 copies, which is pretty awesome. And again, like I don't know like what are good numbers and what are bad numbers and what people like, John Green are selling. I'm sure he's selling a lot more than me, but like he's also been in the game a lot longer. So good for him. But like I feel pretty good about it, and I've really enjoyed the way my career has turned out. And so if you are interested in traditional publishing, there's kind of a usual track that one goes across. And of course, one has to write a good book. And, good is in the eye of the beholder. But for me, I wrote a ton of books, and they were all really crappy. And I don't know that I knew that they were crappy. I just didn't feel like it was, like I was ready to sell them. And I started writing like around 2008. And I started writing Darius in 2015 after having written a bunch of other books. And also taking the advice of a friend who said that I should pick like an actual published book that I really liked and type the whole thing out myself. And I actually really liked that advice. I did it a couple times and I really felt like I leveled up my craft. And Darius was actually the first book I wrote after having gone through that. I started writing it in March of 2015 and I finished a first draft in August of 2015. And then I started sending it out to friends and critique partners for their advice. And they were giving me their feedback on character and plot and pacing and whether the story was a strong story or not. They weren't like pointing out typos or correcting my punctuation. That all comes so much later. And if you take one thing away from all of this, I hope you know that the point of writing is to convey meaning, and grammar and punctuation can always be fixed later, but have something to say. Anyway, so I went through like 6 rounds of revising the book with friends and critique partners over the course of about a year and a half. Right around January of 2017 is when I decided it was good enough to actually try and sell. And so that's like a year and 9 months. And I wasn't actively working the whole time. I took lots of breaks, but I did keep going. And finally I decided I did want to try to publish it. In traditional publishing, generally you need an agent to sell your book to publishers. And agents are basically business partners for writers. They identify writers that they want to work with, they know editors, and they help match books with editors and publishers that want to publish them. And they do not work for the writer, they work with the writer as a partner, and they take a 15% commission on sales. Generally, you get agents by sending out emails called query letters to them. There's kind of other ways like Twitter events and conferences, but like almost everyone I know got their agent by emailing a stranger out of the blue. You can do lots of research on this to make sure they're reputable. I myself kept looking at the acknowledgments of books I liked to see who the agent was that sold that book, and made a list of people that were selling books that I liked and thought I would want to work with them. And so I sent out about 30 emails, was basically in batches of 10 every other week, and was getting ready to send out my 31 through 40 when I got an email from an agent saying they wanted to represent me. And I ended up getting a few other agents that also wanted to represent me, and that's kind of outside the norm. A lot of people do not end up with multiple offers, but I was pretty lucky, and that meant I got to talk to them and see who I felt like I gelled with. And so I signed with someone named Molly O'Neill, who became my agent, and she and I talked, and she told me how much she loved the book, and I was really excited and celebrated. And then she said, by the way, I have ideas on how to make it better. And so we spent another few months revising it even more, especially the middle, which she felt was a little boring, and the goal was that when an editor picks it up and starts reading, we don't want them to put it down in the middle. So we did fix it. She had some great advice for me, and decided it was time to try to sell it. Generally, agents, not all of them, but a lot of them do live in New York City, which is where most of the big publishers are located as well. And so they get to know editors there. They talk to them, they have lunch, coffee, go to events together, and get a sense of that editor's taste. Editors at these publishing houses, again, are not trying to fix grammar and punctuation. They're the ones who are deciding what books the publisher is going to actually publish, and then working with that writer to make that book as good as it can be. In the world of young adult publishing in particular, it's all adults trying to guess what young readers actually want. And sometimes it's a matter of asking themselves what they wish they'd had when they were a young reader. Case in point, one of the editors Molly sent my book to was an editor named Dana Chidiak at Penguin Random House, who was a Lebanese American, and always felt like she never saw any books about the Middle East that weren't about war or terrorism, and never really saw anything that reflected kind of her immigrant experience. And so Molly knew that about her and sent my book to her, and Dana loved it, and it was exactly the kind of book she wanted to publish. And so we sold the book to Penguin Random House. And I was, again, very happy. Got some cake at Succotash downtown. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it has this 8-inch tall citrus cake that's delicious. So I was really excited, and Dana called me and said, I love your book so much. It's exactly what I want. Here's a 7-page edit letter on how I want to make it better. And it was 7 pages, single-spaced, 11-point font. So it was a lot. And I laid on the carpet for a while to cry. Thankfully, my apartment has very comfortable carpet to, lay down and just have a breakdown on. But I, pulled my pants back on and got to work. And Dana was right. There was all these character moments, scenes that needed to be rearranged. Lots of ways to make the book better and stronger. And we did that twice. First with the 7-page edit letter, and then again with a 4-page edit letter. And then with what are called line edits, which is when she literally went through my manuscript and marked it up in track changes and was like, do we really need this sentence? Is this joke landing? Do teenagers really sound like this? And only after all that was done did it finally go into what's called copy edits, which is when someone did finally fix my grammar and punctuation. And I am 35. No, I just turned 36. I'm 36 years old, and I do not know the difference between further and farther, and at this point I probably never will, but there are copy editors for that. My manuscript was littered with lots of things that needed fixed, either things I had used wrong or just things that, it's kind of a matter of opinion on, and Penguin has a particular way of doing it, which is mostly in accordance with the Chicago Manual of Style. Once that was done, the book was off to get turned into an actual book, and so they took that Word document and laid it out as if it was an actual book with book-sized pages, and the interior got designed in nice fonts and little marks and things to show where scene breaks were. And that was kind of my last chance to look at it, because I got what are called first pass pages, which is my last chance to make any little changes. And having been working on the book for, nearly 3 years at that point, I still found little things to change. But eventually, everything was done and it got sent off to the printers. And then it came out. And again, because I was working with the publisher, they took on the responsibility of marketing and publicity, which was really good because they did a much better job than I would have done. And then the book was out into the world. And that's kind of the general kind of path to publishing. Everyone's is a little different. I certainly was very lucky in a lot of ways in that I found an agent fairly quickly and we sold the book fairly quickly. I have a very good friend who spent like years trying to find an agent and then another year trying to sell the book. But that book ended up doing great as well. And I've had friends who got bought by editors and that editor left and then they got inherited by a different editor and it was a nightmare. I've also had friends who that happened to, but they loved their new editor. It's a really fraught life and it's a very uncertain career because we don't always get health insurance. In fact, we don't ever get health insurance, which is why even as I was, embarking on a career in publishing, I kept a day job so that I could have health insurance, which was great until, again, coronavirus, and now I don't have that day job anymore. And so now I am writing full-time, which was always kind of my goal, but I thought, my goal was, by 2023 to be doing it, and now in 2020 I'm doing it. So I guess thanks, coronavirus. And, that's, I guess, how I published my book.